Right, welcome, boxing fans, to another news update. I'm Kurt Ward, and I'm joined by Adam Smith, Andy Patterson, Paul Webb, and we're going to be discussing the October 17th card in Birmingham, headlined by Sam Eggington taking on Frankie Gavin. You've also got Matthew Macklin against Jason Wellborn on that show, Cal Yafai against Jason Cunningham. Paul, you're based in Birmingham. What do you think of this card?
I really like it. It's a huge improvement on the last Matchroom show when they came to the Barclaycard Arena, or the NIA, as it's known. It was a lot of good names in a lot of one-sided fights. And while this show probably doesn't have as big a names, there's a lot of interesting competitive fights. I mean, the main event off the bat. So Sam Eggington defending his British Commonwealth and WBC international titles against Frankie Gavin. It's a fight that, I mean, I found out about it quite late last night. The rumors started circulating around, and I asked Frankie, and I said, "Is this true?" Because I had no idea they were going to go this route. He's never, I've never thought in the past from speaking to him that this was a fight he would consider. But as always with boxers, the short-term financial offer is sometimes hard to ignore. He was offered very good money for the fight, or by the standards of what he would have had for an alternative fight at £140. So he snapped it up. He thinks he is levels above Eggington. I think from a technical point of view, he really should be. However, Sam Eggington is, I mean, for the age that he is, 21 years old, and he's just improved massively. He's boxed really well in his last couple of fights that were supposed to be real challenges for him. And I mean, he barely dropped around against Glenfoot, and he's shown that he's got the size and the power. Some two things which Frankie Gavin has consistently shown at £147 that he doesn't have, and that was why there was so much talk, and that's why he decided to move down. He's taken the fight, and if he wins this fight, he still probably will move down. But it's very, very interesting. It's a big fight in the Midlands. It will sell really well. There's no nonsense animosity between the two. They know each other well. Frankie has taken a couple of little snips at him in the past, but Eggington's not like that. And I think it'll be they might try and build up some Rumble on the Humber-esque bad blood, but there is nothing genuinely between them. I mean, the undercard, there's like I said, there's a couple of really good fights on it. So Cal Yafai is fighting for the vacant British super flyweight title, which Paul Butler vacated, and he's fighting Jason Cunningham. I mean, that should be it's a very winnable fight for Cal Yafai. He should really dominate Cunningham, who's picked up a couple of losses, and he's never really shown that he'd be at Cal's level. But Cal's fought very few domestic opponents because of the weight class he's in. He's always having to look down South America, Mexico, and it'll be good to get him a proper domestic fight and a chief support billing. We've also got Matthew Macklin. He's fighting Jason Wellborn. Now, Jason Wellborn was meant to be fighting Sam Eggington on this bill, and up until last night, that's the fight that Wellborn thought he was having. But Wellborn has been a career pretty much light middleweight. He's fought at welterweight in the past, but the majority of his last few fights have been at £154. Macklin has made the a surprising decision to me to drop down to 154. He's got a fight scheduled in Marbella in a couple of weeks' time, and I think he's going to be at 162 for that. So he's going to be a big weight drop, but he seems pretty confident that he can make it. And I think obviously they are pushing towards a Macklin Brian Rose fight, and obviously that makes sense with Macklin going down to that sort of weight class. And then there's a couple of other sort of local guys on there, Gamal Yafai and Corey Gibbs. But there's another interesting fight on the card between two guys people might not know a huge amount about, but Craig Cunningham and Lennox Clark are fighting for the Midlands area title. Two good, exciting fights to watch. So if people that do go to the arena early, it'll be one well worth watching. But it's a big show for Birmingham. It's a big show of competitive fights. I don't see many one-round stoppages on this.
Andy, I don't know about you, and Paul will disagree, but I'm going with Eggington in this one. I like him in this fight. I think Frankie's taken the fight because he's, the short term gain. He's been offered the money. I think he knows, as everyone else knows, he shouldn't be at this weight. And to me, this is a light welterweight against practically a junior middleweight. I mean, Eggington's massive at the weight, and I just think the confidence is with him, the momentum. I think he's the hungrier fighter going into this. This is a massive fight for him, and I don't think Frankie looks at it as a big fight for him. I think Paul said Frankie thinks he's a class above this guy, but to be honest, I think Frankie thinks that about everyone he faces. And like I said, I've been a critic of his because I've very rarely seen it in the ring. I think he's one of these guys that everyone tells you he's great. Everyone says if they gave out world titles for sparring and gym work, he'd be right up there. But in the ring, he very rarely performs. And How do you see the fight going, Andy?
Well, first off, is the weight. I mean, we've spoken about it for years. People in forums have spoken about it for years that Frankie Gavin shouldn't be at welterweight. He's always looked that type of fleshy type way. He'd responded to criticism about it, got beat off Brook, and decided he's gone back down in weight. And then, obviously, as Paul quite rightly says, he's been given a lot of money to fight Eggington, who is a massive welterweight, in my opinion. I mean, I think he started his career at light middleweight. Big, rangy fighter. Yeah, I agree with you. It's just, I think Eggington could really put it on him, especially the fight goes into middle rounds. He could really put it on Gavin, who I don't know. I mean, I think apart after the Bundu fight and stuff, I just don't know if his heart's really in it. I don't know if Paul maybe knows more on that. If he really has, because if to me it looks like maybe Hearn's maybe setting him up as a sacrificial lamb. That's just my opinion. Don't know what Paul thinks on it. And Matthew Macklin, I think it's almost close to 10 years since he made 154. I don't think he'll make weight, and that's just my personal opinion. I don't think he'll make weight in that fight.
It's tough for Macklin because he's going to have to make weight well, I say he's going to have to make weight. There is going to be a belt up for grabs. So it's going to be with one of the WBC international titles. So he will, well, officially, if he wants to take the belt, he is going to have to make 154. And he alluded to that, I think, in the IFL video, he said about he's going to have to get himself down to it. I think he hasn't been down to it since he fought Jamie Moore. So it's been a long, long time since he had to make that weight.
And if you remember when he fought Sergio Martinez in the build up to that fight, when he was talking about his chance of winning, he actually said that he's the bigger guy because Martinez is a guy who can make 154, and he actually said there's no chance that he could make that weight. But now obviously he's saying he can, but whether he will or not, I think that's going to be interesting to see. Adam, what are your thoughts on first of all the main event in this one?
Well, firstly, there, Kurt, I disagree with you in a big way about Frankie Gavin. I think this is a huge fight for him. Um, he's got away with the Bundu loss because Sky have the ability to brush that under the carpet because it wasn't their carpet, if you like. They can get away with the Kell Brook because Kell Brook is a superstar and a world title, according to them, not me. So they can get away with them too. Now, if Frankie Gavin loses to a 22-year-old that will be unheard of outside our circles, that'll be his second loss in a row. I think it's a huge fight for him.
Yeah,
Career
I
on the
mean,
line kind of thing.
when
Hometown.
when I said that, I mean, I think from us watching, I think it is a big fight for him. But I just don't know whether he actually looks at it as a big fight
Mm.
because I think he looks at it like he's going down a level. That's what I
But
think.
Frankie
He's
Gavin
gonna have to forget about that.
ain't the stupidest of boxers around, and he knows that if he loses this, as you posed the question earlier, where does he go? Um, for the actual fight itself, it's going to be a hell of a fight to price up from the bookmaker's point of view. We've been chatting about it today at work, and there's going to be a right difference in opinion in there, and there'll be no one will be in a rush to price that fight up. In our heads, I would probably have Eggington as a slight favourite in my head, but can someone who is a part timer on the boxing, Ladbrokes headquarters or whatever, put a gold medalist who according to BoxRec, a world champion, sorry, not gold medalist, who according to BoxRec is just coming off, a loss to a world champion. Can they put him as the outsider against a 22-year-old that they've probably only seen once? I don't know the answer to that question, so that will be interesting. As we've said, Eggington is clearly hasn't filled that frame, and he is a big welterweight. And Paul called it right. Frankie has struggled with height and power, or strength, height, and power in welterweight, and he's going to be at disadvantage in all three of them areas. Matthew Macklin, he's come a long way down the pecking order. Matthew Macklin, to be fair, and he's been over in America fighting or talking up fights with God knows who. He's lost on big bills, and now he's coming down to face Wellborn. I think that. I don't expect him to make weight, as Andy said. And then the other one I was going to comment on, I've gone and now forgot, which is unfortunate. Who's the other fight on
I
this?
think Cowify, Cunningham.
Oh, yeah, Cowify. Yeah, just a quick one on that. I think that's a highly tactical matchmaking from these guys because they can see it as two fingers up to Paul Butler because he vacated that title.
By the way, did I hear right that we're supposed to be removing the British super flyweight title?
That's the rumours.
Yeah, yeah, that's what apparently the board was saying they're going to take that belt away. But now, because no one had
Because it's
contested
for
it,
a
and
vacant title.
before Paul Butler had it, I think it was same again. It was being contested by guys with very average records who'd won as many fights as they'd lost because there's so few in the country, and that's why I quite like the fight for Cal. It's the same for Macklin. I mean, this is another building fight for Macklin. They could have imported some Argentinian in, someone from the prison canteen, but they're giving him Jason Wellborn. He should be miles above Wellborn, but at least Wellborn is gonna bring some support. He's motivated to want to win. He's not just coming to get paid and go home. And I think that's where they've got this card right. And again, we were talking earlier, or talking about another video about the competitiveness of the main event and how hard they are to pick. I mean, I've sat and watched these guys fight numerous times up close, and I really don't know. I'm sat in that such a funny camp where I think from a pure skill point of view and in terms of the level they've competed at, I'd got to go with Frankie Gavin. But Eggington is riding a real crest at the moment. He's very motivated. And if you were to catch, is there a better time to catch Frankie Gavin than coming off a very one-sided, demoralising world title defeat to Kell Brook? But you could also argue that has there been too much emphasis put on Eggington, because as good as he's looked, he's beat his two names of note that he's beaten, really, Shane Singleton and Glenn Foote. And, Glenn Foote couldn't punch out of a paper bag. Shane Singleton's shown his limitations. But I'm not going to knock Eggington, because I think he's, in his last three fights, he's barely lost a round, and he's looking big at the weight. He's also developed a really nice jab. He seems to put his punches together well. I don't know if his style, to beat Frankie Gavin, you have to pressure, you have to do what Bundu did, really, and Brook, and just be on him and pressurise him and be too big and strong. I think Eggington will naturally want to box, but if John Pegg, who's in his corner, and he's a very knowledgeable guy and he knows Frankie Gavin very well, I think he'll tell him just to stick it on him from round one. And I think if Eggington loses, it's not the end of the world. If Frankie Gavin loses, I don't know where he goes. I really don't see where he goes from here.
I think a really impressive performance from Eggington was the Denton Vassell fight, where he basically outfought him and outmanned him, and that's when I really stood up and thought, because obviously Vassell, he has limitations, but very strong at the weight. I mean, we saw Gavin beat him as well comfortably, but obviously Gavin's looked upon as a lot higher level than Eggington, and Eggington's a lot younger, so he's really confident at the moment, and I just think it's a really good fight to make. And as we've said, Gavin, Eggington, a loss to Gavin, it's not the end. It's a bit like Bradley Skeet, a loss to Gavin, it's not the end of the world. He's still going to carry on, but Gavin loses here. I mean, there's a huge amount of pressure on him, and how is Gavin going to handle that pressure? I mean, people have questioned, his mental stability before, so can he handle it in this fight?
But I will say, the two poor performances for Gavin have come at a high level. So they've come against, but I say Kell Brook was a poor performance. He was never in the fight, but Kell Brook is arguably one of the best welterweights in the world. And his other fight against Bundu, he lost that fight by a round, and he was dropped very heavily, took a shellacking for a couple of rounds, but he came back to completely outbox Bundu rounds 10, 11 and 12. So he's never struggled at domestic level. The Bradley Skeet fight was just horrendous from a Clash of Stars point of view, but I mean, he won that fight. I don't think there was anyone really that gave it to Skeet when he's been in with the likes of, domestic level guys like Jason Wellborn Jr., Witter, Denton Vassell. He's impressed. And bear in mind, that was when he wasn't training properly, when he didn't have the right sort of backroom team with him. He's just from speaking to him and just seeing the tweets he's putting out. I mean, since he's trainer, he's always out running. He's eating. I know it sounds really daft to us because you think, well, of course they eat the proper food. Frankie Gavin didn't really. His nutrition wasn't there. It just compared to what pretty much any other professional fighter that I've known. He's now looking after all that properly, and I think he will be in good shape. The one worry for me is if Gavin does beat Eggington, then he will probably think, "Oh, I should stick at 147 now." I don't know.
Rematch with Brook. Pay-per-view.
Well,
the world wants to see it, mate.
Right, exactly. But it's a
Wembley.
good hard to call. I think Adam made a great point with the bookies. I would probably open up Gavin at something like 4-7. I think it's very, very close though. I don't know where they're going to go with it, and it's not like I think anyone's going to dive on it and make a load of money, because it's a real, toss a coin in the air. It should be Gavin's. He should just be too skilled for him, but Eggington's got all the momentum, the size, the power, the strength, and it's a really good fight. And this is why people have been on at Eddie Hearn to make these kind of fights, because it seems so obvious. Two guys from the same area in this. There's a big size arena to put the fight on. They're at the same weight class, sort of. We're seeing this. We'll get this tomorrow when Callum Smith, Rocky Fielding gets announced. All these kind of fights should be bang obvious when you've got a stable as big as Eddie Hearn's, and it's about time we started to see them.
Paul, that's a good point, and having waned in my support for Matchroom last few weeks, it's a decent point to make about this fight could easily have been avoided. They could have said, oh well, we're taking Eggington a different route. He's already got some international super blooming whatever it is belt, and Gavin's going south in weight, so yeah, easily avoided. But they've put it on, and it has turned out to be a good card. And you guys will know better than me. Not that you live in the area now, but do you think it will sell in the area? I know there's been a famine of boxing in Birmingham. The other show was shite. Will this sell?
Yeah, I think the last fight sold pretty well, but off the back of Anthony Joshua. So Sam Eggington, when he was flogging his tickets on Facebook, was flogging it as Anthony Joshua. Oh, and I'm also fighting. So it was very much that was the leader the leader on the case. Macklin and the Afais don't do tickets in Birmingham; they just don't. However, the main event really will. I mean, Frankie Gavin is capable of doing. He's done upwards of 1,000 tickets personally before. He sold a huge amount at the Brook fight. There was a huge amount of Frankie Gavin fans that went down, and because even though people talk about this as a Birmingham thing, they're not both from Birmingham, and they don't have the same sort of fan base. Sam Eggington is Black Country from Starbridge. Frankie Gavin is Birmingham Centre. So they've got a good mixture of different fans that will come in. And again, the guys they've been very clever with who they're putting on the undercard. A lot of the guys lower down the order will shift an awful lot of tickets, like Dan Breeze, Corey Gibbs. So I think it will sell. The reaction I've seen from people, I've spoken to a couple of people and a couple of my friends that I know, and they're really interested in going because of the Battle of the Brum element, which is what it's been called. So locally, it will do well. How well it will do on TV, I don't know. I think it won't probably rate massively well for Sky, but I think it will do well in the arena because, like you say, there's been such a small amount of boxing on that even when they served up one-sided trash last time, there was still several thousand people there. And it's not the easiest to sell that many tickets to a venue these days.
Right, well, we might as well do a neck on the line at the end. Let's do predictions. Andy, how do you see this guy and what's going to happen?
I've often thought that at some point Gavin would actually be able to put it all together, and I think that time's now passed him by. As we've said, you've got a big, tall, hungry, young welterweight. I think Eggington it would probably, if not in points, but I think he could probably get to him late if he puts it on him. Depends on Gavin's stamina, how he makes the weight properly, if he's getting the right nutrition, as Paul says. But I think Eggington is far too strong for him. And if Gavin just can't put it all together on the night, his skills, his movement, I don't think he's going to have it. Then Eggington could actually get to him and stop him. So I'm going to go Eggington, and fuck it, I'm going to say he's going to stop him late.
Mine's short and sweet, and it's Eggington stoppage.
Paul?
It's like I can't agree with those two purely because I just think that if Gavin gets off to a decent start, I think he can route him on points. Gavin's very good at picking up rounds and picking up points on the judges' cards, but it just depends how decent Eggington starts. If Eggington gets on him early, imposes his size and strength, he's got a real shot. But I think Frankie beats him on points. I think he beats him quite wide.
Well, I'm going to agree with the first two. I think Eggington's going to get to him late. I think this is his cup final, as they say. And I just like I made the point earlier, to me, even though I look at this and fans do as a massive fight, I'm just not sure how big a fight Frankie sees it. He's fighting again for titles that he vacated, if you remember. Eggington, to me, he's a step down to obviously the Cal Brooks, the Leonard Bundus. He has had two losses in just over a year as well, both to good fighters, but he's still got the losses. And I'm going with the younger guy, the one with the momentum, and the bigger guy. I think that's the main thing. And I'm going with Eggington to stop him late. And he might be behind on points, but I think he's going to get to him, and it's going to be tough for Frankie to see where he goes. But I think it's going to be a good fight, and there'll be I think quite a few talking points after. Anyone got anything you want to add? Yeah,
I will say this: Matchroom Sky will want Eggington to win because he's great to watch on TV. He's got a real sort of Cinderella backstory that, this is a guy who, if they turn around to him and said, right, we want you to fight so-and-so at light middleweight, he'd just say yes. He just says yes to everything. He's a really nice kid with a good story, and he is up and coming. I think that when these fight, this has all the hallmarkings for me of the Bradley Skeet Frankie Gavin fight, when that was made because they knew Frank was going, so they put him in with someone on an away show as such on London on the London bill. They put a lot of thing behind Skeet, and Frankie still got the win. So it has all the hallmarks of that fight. Hopefully, it's nowhere near as dull as that fight was.
Right, I'd like to thank Paul Webb, Adam Smith, Andy Patterson. I've been Kurt Ward. You've heard our predictions there, so you can troll us afterwards, whoever gets it right and wrong. Keep listening to the news updates and leave your comments in the YouTube section. And keep listening to the podcast on Sunday. Thanks a lot.